Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Diane Enlow and I am the Director of Children's Ministries at the Blue Springs campus of Church of the Resurrection. I am married to my husband Andrew, and we have been married for almost 16 years, and we have 3 kids together. Our oldest son is in 8th grade currently, and our daughter is in 4th grade, and then we have a little one in kindergarten, another boy. So we have a little bit of perspective there on different ages, and we are currently living the middle school stage with our oldest. And Mike is here joining us as well. So Mike, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Great, thanks, Diane. So I'm Mike Petersma, and I am the elementary program director at our Leewig campus. And I've been married to my wife, Laura, for this will be our 25th anniversary coming up this June, I believe. And we have 3 girls. My oldest is a junior in college, and my middle is a 9th grader in high school, and my youngest is a middle schooler, a 7th grader. And so yeah, it's we've gone through 2, and I guess you could say safely navigated that. Still fingers crossed, but yeah, and now the last one to get through that. It's a very interesting time.
So Mike's there is an expert on this middle school stage, so I'm hoping to gain some knowledge from him. No, we're talking that middle schoolers are individuals. You know, every kid is an individual. They're all different. And, you know, Mike has 3 girls, and I'm going through it with my oldest son. And as we were just sharing stories and talking about this, we realized, you know, not only how different each child is, but how different parenting a middle school boy versus a middle school girl can be. So the next thing we were saying is that we found a lot of common ground there in what our roles were and things that we experienced and how we handled them. So your role as a parent, a lot of you might be searching for that and some things to write down and take home. These are just some words to remember. And we kind of came up with and thought they would be helpful. And that your role as a parent is to affirm, love, accept, and encourage. And if you can do those 4 things, especially in this stage, I feel like it might help tremendously. Our kids in this stage are really going through a discovery, like discovering the big world around them and how they fit into it. I mean, similar to when you have like a newborn or a toddler, they're discovering the world around them immediately and physically around them. But they don't necessarily see everything outside of their house and the room and their family. But now is the time where they really look out and say, wow, I'm not the center of the world. There's a ton going on around me, and everybody's different. Every family is different. And they're trying to see, you know, how and where they fit in. So one conversation I've had with my kids, and Mike, I think we talked about it a little bit too, but I've had this conversation at multiple different stages. I think the first time I had this conversation with one of my kids was entering kindergarten and maybe even preschool, but it was not everybody has to like you, and that's okay. You know, that's not a requirement. Not everybody has to like you, but it is important for you to be kind to them. And this is another big conversation to have again at middle school, because they're really, really trying to see how they fit in their social groups, and they take things more personally in this age. And so I don't know, Mike, did you have that conversation with your girls? Do you feel like that's a big topic?
Yeah, Diane, I have, and I think too, not only that conversation, but I think as a parent, right, we have to sometimes recognize and let go of the fact that not only does everyone not have to like them, but they don't have to like us as parents and like how we parent, right? I think there's so much about, we feel like we are being represented by our kids, right? And so, wow, if they don't make good choices, that reflects on us. And you know, they are navigating. This is their time to find out who they are, and they have to make some of those things on their own without your dictating that. And so, as a parent, that's a hard thing to do. It would be to let that go, right? And say it doesn't really matter what people. Not everyone has to like how I'm parenting, and not everyone has to like me per se in that as well. So definitely for our kids, they don't, and not everyone has to like them, but not everyone has to like us either.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I know there's, you know, kids make big mistakes at this age, you know, like they're in this discovery, they have to learn. And it's hard for us to kind cut those ties and let them learn those mistakes without like, telling them everything to do. But it's important for them to learn while they're under our house and they're with us so we can help catch them. But it is hard. And you do sometimes take it personally. And you do wonder, oh, what if, others find out that they made this mistake, or, what are the other parents going to think? And that's a big struggle. I think for many years, not just middle school, but it's definitely enhanced in those middle school years that, when we got assigned this middle school class, we were like, thanks for this one. Nobody loves the middle school years. Nobody loves through them. And I would say it's not the favorite phase to parent either,
No, it's not. I heard someone say it once, but it was like, what happened, like when they hit middle school, they say, okay, who took my child, my middle schooler, and what planet are they on, and when will I get them back? Right? Because they all that they knew who they were, once they hit middle school, that like they become someone completely different that they've never seen before, never recognized, and they do things and say things and act in ways that they've never seen before, and just like, whoa, what happened? And when am I going to get my child back? Right? Yes. Yes, that is a feeling I think that most every parent will go through with middle schooler. And I'm here to tell you, after coming through two of those, they do come back. You do get them back. So hang in there. It just takes a few years of this weird stage that they go through, and that you go through with them.
And I think that's key to remember that as weird it is for you, because they've changed so much, they're changing so much, and they don't understand, like why do I feel this way? What are these big emotions? And then again, I keep referring back to those toddler years, but it is kind of like a toddler, and they do have tantrums. They're just a little different than those toddler tantrums. I remember, so Mason, my oldest, is very calm, cool, collected. Nothing bothers him. He is just very easygoing child. And I remember the first time that I realized he was starting to have some of those teenage year or preteen rages or hormonal things that happen, is he was really upset one evening after dinner because he wanted to choose, what he wanted to eat. It was something very small that has happened many times, but all of a sudden it made him very upset. And he was over by the refrigerator, and, we were saying, no, you need to eat healthy. You need to finish your dinner before you choose something like a dessert. And he got so mad, he grabbed the refrigerator handles and he shook the refrigerator and moved it across the room. And even the look in his own eyes was, he didn't realize what was happening to him, and I was looking at him kind of like, wow, I've never seen him act this way. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, how do I handle this? Because I'm sure this is not the first of these situations we're going to encounter. So I remembered back to the toddler years where I just stepped back and just let them experience it, let them go through it, and then talk to him about it later. And that worked in that moment for us, was just letting him experience that and asking him later, what happened down there? And he and I both got a good laugh about it. And we still kind of joke about it now, you're not mad enough to go move the refrigerator across the living room, are you? And it's a joke. And he said, I don't know what happened to me. I don't know why I felt that way. And so that led to a conversation with us about, you're going to start feeling this, and here's how we can get through it together as a parent,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I totally relate to that. And I thought too, I kind of got married a little bit later in life. And so I thought, oh, well, that's a good thing, because I've seen how all my friends parented their kids, and that would be just great wisdom for me as I parent, because now I can become even a better parent than I even imagined I could be, because I've got all this experience of watching my friends go through parenting. And what I found out was that didn't really help me at all, with that, right? And it doesn't even really necessarily help that I have two kids that I've already taken through the middle school stages, because my third one now is nothing like the other two whatsoever. And that's, I find it interesting. It's like every one of them has a different personality. Every one of them does things differently. And every one of them in that middle school age is going to react and handle things different, because it's not just middle school. You've got all these other things. You said hormones, personality types, and things like that. My middle schooler, my youngest, who's a middle schooler, out of all, probably has the biggest issues with anger, with being mad, that my other two didn't. And even when dealing with that, and we process that, we go through that when she gets mad, she is slow. She's much slower to respond to that and own it and have that conversation and use and say those words, I'm sorry, things like that. Whereas my middle child, she almost immediately like was sorrowful and coming and asking, saying she was sorry and asking for forgiveness. And so it's, you know, it's like, wow, what, that's not the way, that's not the way Liz does it. So it's like, you know, that is different. And I think also, I was in a parenting seminar once where they just said, choose your battles, right? When you're having some of those things, and you know, don't draw a line in the sand on every battle, you know, everything that goes on, because it'll be a long couple of years for you, for sure, right? Just choose those battles, make sure that they're the ones that are really truly important. I know they all seem important, but there are some that just really aren't, that you can just say, okay, I'm just going to let that one go, because there's going to be bigger and more important battles ahead.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I know I felt as a parent through this stage, and, you know, Mason actually felt as well, was that, you know, you really realize how fast time goes with your kids during this stage. And so there's a bit of anxiety as to, oh my gosh, have I taught you everything you need to know? I don't have much time. I need to teach you it all now. And so then that's where like that picking your battles thing comes into play. It's like, okay, what all is so important that we need to cover now, you know? And one of those things that I feel, you know, I lost a sense of connection because I was no longer the one where he was coming to the family for the entertainment and the social life. And what are we going to do today? It was, can I have more time with my friends? You know, there's all of this, you know, trying to figure out who they are in the world. And so then their social lives are very important all of a sudden. And sometimes it feels like they're more important than you. And so your time with them, you feel like, okay, I've got to teach you all these things. But I think like when you were talking about that, it reminds me that, you know, you need to balance how much you are, you know, constantly parenting them versus how much you're connecting with them, because that connection time is less and less through these years. And you're going to have to be more creative, and you're going to have to connect with them where they are and the things that they like. And
yeah, that's exactly, no, that's exactly right, Diane. And you know, you just, they're going to be parented by, unfortunately, we don't necessarily like that, but they're going to be parented by other people other than us. It's just that's just the phase of life that they go through. They're going to listen to other people's voices, and that's part of their development. That's kind of what they're going through, and that's how they're, you know, they're making their choices. They're putting a lot more weight on their friends at this stage, and maybe even some other adults who are not. And that's why those other adults in their life, family members or friends, whatever, are important for them, because as they speak into their life, you know, they're placing a high value, and maybe sometimes higher value than they place on you as a parent, right? Which is like, you're like going, wow. But yeah, for sure. And I think too, when we have those conversations, when we have that time that we're investing in them, to just make sure we're doing a really good job of listening, which is hard for me, right? I feel like I have to impart knowledge, not sit and listen. But man, if you sit and listen, you'll learn a lot, and they'll actually tell you oftentimes what it is that they're wanting and what they're struggling with. And for our youngest, Elizabeth, she actually would tell us, like, why can't we just play some games at night, right? And like going, and I had to finally just stop, say, you know, you're right. We need to stop and just play games as a family. You know, whatever it is, let's just sit and play some games, because that is time, quality time, that you're being able to sit and just have fun and have conversations as you're playing those games, and just kind of be there, right? Be present in their life. And a lot of times they, you know, as many times as they don't want to be around you, there are those times, I think, if you listen, where they're asking for that. And so you just need to be listening so that we know when those times are and take advantage of them.
Absolutely. And I think the funny thing is, lately, Also one other important developmental thing that you need to understand about middle schoolers is that this is when their sleep schedules shift, so they start to sleep in later in the mornings and stay up later at night. As parents, I realized this because not only is his sleep pattern changing, but then I feel like, do I go to sleep when he's still awake? And of course, all those big connection times that they want to have are always at 10 or 11 at night. You're like tucking them in or saying goodnight or whatever, tucking them in, I guess, because they're still awake, but saying goodnight to them. And then that's when those big conversations come up.
Yes.
And as tired as you are, it's important to have those conversations in the moment when they come up and leave that door open for later for you to bring those conversations back up or for them to ask questions. And I think one thing I was going to mention earlier was it's important to have a couple of Bible verses that you have to fall back on just for guidance. And one that somebody shared with me that I feel like, wow, I wish I would have written this one down earlier was James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. In these stages, not only is that important for you to teach to them, but it's important as a parent to remember, because like you were saying, do a lot of listening. This is definitely the stage where we need to listen to them more. And, don't always become angry. Don't be slow to become angry. I'm sorry. Because a big thing, like this is a really big thing to remember in this stage, is don't take it personally. There's going to be so much that's going to happen in this stage, whether it's their tantrums or their distance from you or them listening to somebody else over you, things that we've talked about. And a lot of that can be kind of hurtful as a parent. And you can kind of take it to heart, like, wow, do they not value my opinion? Well, they value it, but that's all they've heard up until this point. So it's important for them to find out, is this really true, what my parents have taught me? So I think we talked a lot about this and, valuing the time that you have with them and making that time important. So there's kind of some things that we've talked about that we decided would be important for you to remember some point in this stage. If you have not already had these conversations or taught them these things, these would be the important things to check off the list through these years. There's some conversations and even just some things that you can teach your middle schooler, because they're going through this desire for independence and figuring out who they are. So in, 6 or so years, they're going to have to be tested on that. How much do they know about the world? And so the things that you could teach your middle school that we talked about are work ethic. So things that you can teach them to do that will foster their desire for independence for their future, like chores, things around the house, things outside of the house. And I know maybe some of those things that we talked about, Mike, might be different than what you've taught your girls versus what we've taught Mason, but I feel like everybody needs to know the same things. So what are some things that maybe you have realized maybe you didn't teach some of your older daughters that you had to go back and say, oh, you don't know how to do this, I need to teach you this, or that you guys felt like were really important to teach them?
Yeah, wow. Well, there's a lot. Sometimes I just feel like, and I've said this many times, that evidently I'm not a very good teacher, because I keep finding myself at the same place with them, right, over and over again. It's like going, this is like a repeat button that keeps being hit, and like evidently I'm not teaching it well, or you're not learning it well, or something, because here we are again, right? And that's frustrating. As a parent, it's frustrating. It's like, one, why are you not learning this? Why are you not learning this? And and I think sometimes too, it's like we want them to be able to just learn it, but we don't recognize that we're saying that as a parent with a whole lot of experience behind that, right? And not really necessarily placing ourselves in their shoes at that moment. And some things I think we can teach them and need to teach them, and some things I think they need to learn on their own the hard way, right? The life of hard knocks, and we hate that for our kids, because we want to try. That's a whole part of I think parenting too, is trying to protect them from some of those hard knocks. that they go through because we may have gone through them, or we've had people that we know that have gone through them. But sometimes there's just no other way to go through it and teach them. They just have to learn it on their own, right?
Yeah.
And so that's hard. It's hard as a parent to recognize that and allow it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm thinking about, just a little bit of that, those conversations that are really important to have, we've kind of picked out about 4 things that we feel like, if you don't have these conversations with your child, they're going to learn them from somebody else. And maybe some of them are things that you've already talked about that have another layer, but the four conversations are health, sexual integrity, technology, and authentic faith. So those are 4 things. Maybe write them down, so that when your kids are going to high school, you can say, have we had this conversation yet? Maybe schedule a time to have them, but I find the best time to have these conversations is in the moment, when there's a situation that comes up, when the door has been opened. But you need to really pay attention to that, because these conversations are hard, and sometimes they're embarrassing. Sometimes you feel like, am I prepared to have this conversation as a parent? You're never going to be prepared to have the conversation as a parent. It's going to be awkward for you, and it's going to be awkward for them. But I guarantee a lot of these conversations, if you don't have them with your child, somebody else will. And so first, health, like, I feel like, and this might be different for boys and girls, and my child is a clean child, but you've taught your kid how often to shower, how often to brush their teeth, all of these body awareness things, I feel like, for years and years and years. And then it's like, this, why are you not doing this? Or, I just am reminding you, these things are important. You need to wear deodorant because their body is changing. They need to wear deodorant. How often should they shower? How well? Have those conversations, because you're no longer like telling them, or, hey, go shower now. But you still do need to remember to check, like, have you showered in the last 2 days? And I know this is across the board, other parents I've talked to. Not that you need to call your child out, but remind them that people notice these things, and it's important for their health that as their bodies are changing, they need to pay attention to their hygiene. And on top of that is bedtimes. Like I said, their bedtimes shift, and it's very important for them in these developmental ages to get enough sleep. I know that, for us, how we feel when we don't get enough sleep. And imagine if our hormones were doing what theirs are doing, and then you don't get enough sleep on top of that. Nobody wants to be around that. Daily schedules. Also, the conversation here that's important to have is knowing what to expect with the changes in their body. A lot of kids have those videos that they watch in middle school, but I know that now 2 of my kids have seen those videos. They're not really paying attention to the videos. They're paying attention to how all their friends are reacting to the information that's presented in those videos. So it's important for you to have that conversation at home as well. Did you find that as?
Yeah, I did. So I think too, yeah, I said to my kids the other day, I feel like I feel like instead of my wife and I raising our kids, that our kids are being raised by TikTok. Right. And like they watch these TikTok videos for like hours and hours and hours, and it becomes like a part of their life, and they follow these TikTokers, and they're like going, I need to be more involved with what some of the stuff they're watching on TikTok and stuff like that. But it's like, it truly is. They are so much on that, and that's a part of their life, right? It wasn't a part of mine, but it is a part of theirs. And they do take a lot from that, and they do look out each other. I mean, they talk about it, right? So they have those conversations amongst their friends about what they're seeing on TikTok, on those videos and stuff like that. And so hugely important. And that kind of leads to technology, Diane, another one of the 4, which is, that's a battle in and of itself, right? In this day and age, our kids grew up with a pacifier in one hand and a digital device in the other hand. That's just so crazy, but it's true. And it's not going to go away. That technology is only going to grow. And so setting those boundaries for that, which can be a challenge. I know it is for our home, right? As far as how much time you be on the phones, and there you can do. I know you have talked about setting some of those limits on their phone
Mhm.
that come up, which I think are important as well. But even you talked about bedtimes, and my kids, we used to have this plan that they would put their phones at a certain time, had to be placed on a charger downstairs. Well, now that is loosened up, and now they take their phones upstairs to bed to their bedrooms with them, because that's another thing they do, right? They come home, next thing I know, where's Elizabeth? Where's Caroline? Oh, they're upstairs in their bedroom, right? Door locked and on their phone, no doubt, to looking at stuff. And then it gets time for bed, and I've had to go into Elizabeth, my middle schooler, and say, do not fall asleep with that phone in your bed. You need to put it on the side. And if I need to take it, I won't take it. But they use those phones for so many things, including an alarm clock, right? I haven't seen an alarm clock in our house forever, right? Because they use their phones for their alarm clock. So like, oh, now I have to either buy an alarm clock so I can take their phone away, or continue to let them use that and be responsible with their phone. So technology is a big struggle, but I think trying to have that conversation with them about boundaries and how they
Mhm.
can keep them, and the importance of that. And I think here just lately, I'm going to give them a little bit of not that they need any more school, but just to look up, do some research on the effects of um, being on the digital screens for so long, what some of that research is showing, and things like that. But for
Yeah,
sure, technology is huge.
exactly. And I know that it's even harder now just with what we've gone through with the, pandemic and everything with technology, because, Mason, we gave him a cell phone when he was in 6th grade because he would be possibly staying after school for things. And if one of us forgot to pick him up, um, we noticed there was a big difference in how schools were with kids in elementary school versus middle school. They kind of, when you're done with something, you can just walk out the door and wait for your ride. And I didn't want him standing out front without a way back into the school and nobody's there to pick him up. We wanted him to be able to contact us. And, also he's possibly over at friends' houses or doing other things with sports or after, other activities that we wanted him to be able to have a phone and contact us. So what we did is we found actually, I think it was on Pinterest, a contract that we liked. And it just talked about how, this is something we are giving you. This is not your phone. This is our phone we're letting you have. And we can take it away if you don't follow our rules, which I kind of laugh at now because yes, we definitely stick to a lot of the contract, but some of it we've relaxed a lot in the last year and a half because like we said earlier, this is their stage where social interactions are, top priority. They're figuring out who they are in their social world. And the social world around them was physically taken away for like a year. They were not able
Mhm.
to be around other people. So their only way to connect with their peers was either over phone or, like you said, TikTok, or Mason's into video games. He plays online with his friends, and that was really his only time to do that. Whereas before, we had strict rules on how many hours a day, and we used an app to control the number of hours they were able to be on their devices and things like that. So we did have to relax a lot of that and realize that, these friendships and other relationships outside of our house are important no matter how they're happening. And I really feel like that is what helped get him through a lot of that time at home, was being able to be on his games with his friends or connect with his friends over their text chats. So there's definitely a balance there, parenting, trying to figure out how do you still keep them safe and make them aware. And that's a conversation you have to have. And one big thing
Mhm.
remember, and we've all seen it happen in the world, is somebody has posted something or shared something and it comes back to get them years later. And so one big conversation was whatever you put out there in the world on social media, a text to a friend, a video, a Snapchat, whatever it is that you put out there in the world, no matter what, if you put it out there for 2 seconds and delete it, it's out there forever. It's permanent. Your opinions may change of these things that you're putting out there. Your viewpoints and situations, everything around you is going to change, but that is permanent and can always come back to get you. And, I would hate to say that any of your friends might not be your friends again in the future, but we all know that friendships change. And if you make somebody mad, they could use that against you. And so that's an important thing to talk to your kid about as young as you can, as soon as they have devices in their hands, because that is a vital thing to just make sure to talk to them about once, explain it to them, and remind them of constantly.
Yeah, good words for sure, Diane. I love the fact that you did the contract thing, and I think, that I heard someone say once, much like a driver's license. A driver's license, being able to have a driver's license and drive, is not a right, it's a privilege, right?
Yes.
And the same thing with the phone, right? Having a phone, it's not a right. You don't have a right as a child to have a phone. It's a privilege to have a
Yes.
phone, much like having a driver's license. And so I love that. I love the contract part of it for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's the technology and having those conversations and being open about it. And again, that's being present in what's going on in your kid's life, and letting them know that the reason that you're doing this, the reason you're having these conversations, is because you do care and about them and what's going on. So, and the last one leading to the authentic faith, the faith that they have. So it's not. Is it not hard enough, right, that we have the role of parenting them through life and those struggles, but then as a Christian, we have the role to actually try to help them form their own faith development. And up to this point, it's been predominantly us, right, in our faith. But once they hit that middle school age, really is a big shift, and that faith begins to come their own. They begin to ask those questions about, is there really a God, and why, if there really is a God, why did he allow these things to happen? And some really, really, really difficult questions and conversations that can come up during that stage. And I know the first time I went through some of those with my oldest, was kind of fearful, even being in ministry and going through that. It's like going, oh, what if I don't have an answer for them on this? Oh my God, number one, I'm supposed to have an answer. I'm a parent, number one, and I'm supposed to have an answer because I'm a minister, in ministry, number two. But sometimes we don't have answers, and we don't have all the answers, right? And it's okay to not have all the answers. It's good to be able to say to them, if they ask you a question or pose something that you don't really have a good answer to, it would be just to affirm that that's a really, really good question. And those are really, really good thoughts that you're having and processing. And let's continue to have those discussions and process through those. And let's come back to it. And let me do a little bit of research and look at some things, and let's come back and let's have that conversation again on it. So you don't have to have the answer right then, but certainly affirm that they're having those conversations and having those doubts and those questions, because those are totally legit, and particularly at that age. But let them know that you want to do some further checking, and you want to follow back up with that conversation and have that conversation again. So
yeah, I agree. And we actually just had this happen recently as Mason is getting ready to go into high school. He, of course, at like 11 o'clock at night is just like, Mom, I'm really stressed out. What if God isn't real? The future is happening so fast. I'm going to be 18 in 4 years. And it was just all coming down on him. And that he was like, wow, I am going to be an adult soon, and just how fast life is going. And I remember, he asked all these huge questions, like all in one big sentence. And of course it was 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, okay, here we go. But, like you said, Mike, it's okay to say, what do you think about that? We don't have to give them every answer. They need to discover it themselves. And, and I think it's okay for them to struggle with that. They need to feel, and what I told him is that you need to feel God in your life. You need to feel him around you. You need to find him and discover him, and he is around you. But it's important for you to feel his presence. And it's okay for you to question things. God created you that way, and that's okay. And you can help guide them to where to find answers. And I think another thing is making sure that they're involved. Make sure they're involved in different types of things, like serving the community, different church groups, whether they're sitting in worship with you or they're involved in their youth group, or maybe they're serving in the children's ministry. Maybe they are
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, just make sure that you're providing places for them to get answers, and always leave that door open and follow up on those conversations. Have you thought more about that? Going back to those conversations and helping them, and letting them know that you've struggled with that in the past. I've felt God around me not so close, or I've felt an absence of God, and I've questioned when this has happened, why would God allow that? And that's okay, because we're not supposed to have all the answers.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. And, experience is so much a part of faith development, right? Certainly knowledge, reading the Bible, praying, those types of being in a small group and that kind of stuff, that experiences that we go through shapes our faith development. And so oftentimes those things, when they're having those hard questions and they're dealing with those things, and they are going through that process, that's all of an experience that's going to form and shape who they are. And I know as parents, our biggest fear is, but what if we do all this and they walk away from God, right? I think for me, the biggest fear as a parent, what if one of my kids completely walks away from God? And I think one of the things that one of my scripture verses I love so much in Luke 22, 31 and 32, Jesus is having this conversation with Peter. And, it's right. He's right in the midst of him walking, closer and ever so closer to when he's going to be arrested and tried and eventually to the cross. But he's saying to Peter, who's closest, probably closer than anyone to him as his disciples, and he says to him, "Behold, Peter, Satan has demanded permission to sift you as wheat." Almost like kind of God had Satan asked God to do with Job, right? He asked for permission to sift Peter as wheat. But then he said this, which I think is the most important thing. "But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail." And I read that and went, wow. "And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers and sisters." I think that's so huge, right? That Jesus would pray for Peter, and that he prays for our kids, right?
Mhm.
And I think too, it's a great illustration for us as parents. We can do all that we can to instill that faith in them. At some point in time, we have to let go and pray that their faith may not fail, and that faith that we helped place and help in their development, that faith may not fail. And they may make choices and they may walk away for a period of times, but let's continue praying that their faith wouldn't fail and that they would
Mhm.
turn back around if that might be the case, because
Yeah.
they have that faith, because that work and that foundation was laid. They have something to fall back on, and God and the Holy Spirit will use that, I believe.
Absolutely. And, I think, like you said, it is your biggest fear as a parent that they'll turn away. And we need to remember that as much as they are our child, they are also God's child. And he won't forget about them, and he'll always be working in their lives. And that's something I find reassurance in. And just not only for you as a parent to pray for them, but just knowing that, God is there with them, and Jesus is praying for them. So we covered a lot. There's a lot here.
There is.
But, just to kind of recap, just make sure that you're not taking it personally. Your role is to love, encourage, affirm, accept, and that you're having these tough conversations with your kids, not just once and checking it off, but you are continually having these conversations in the moment. And those conversations are about their health and hygiene, sexual integrity, and, respecting their bodies and the bodies of others, and then technology. Make sure you're figuring that out and setting boundaries and helping them to set their own boundaries. Authentic faith, helping provide those foundational blocks or building upon those foundational blocks that they already have. And just leaving the door open and continually going back to these conversations. One thing I had to remind Mason when he was worried about it is that you are growing up and you're becoming an adult, but it doesn't mean that when you're 18 that you're out of the house and you're no longer my child. You will be my child forever. We're not going to kick you out at 18. We'll always be by your side. You can always come back to us. You can always count on us. We will always be here and we'll always love you. No mistake you make is going to be too big to affect how much we love you. And I think that's an important thing that your child needs to hear and they need to have reassurance of. I know I find reassurance in my parents with that, and I find reassurance in knowing that God always loves me. You know, all my sins are forgiven and that I can always turn to him. So I think providing that for your child and reminding them of that you will always be loved, not only by us, but by God, is important. We covered a lot, Mike. Do you think that there's anything we missed here?
No, I don't think so. I love what you said there at the end. And it's like, it is, but I remember coming back from a parenting conference once where the speakers left us with this thing that your main role as a parent, the main role as parents is to get your child to a place for them to leave. Yes. Right. And I remember us having a discussion with other parents, like going, what did they just say? Well, I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for them to leave, right? I don't even, the idea or concept of them leaving and, going on their own is like, that was just like, I don't want to hear that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it is, I agree, that's our role is to prepare them for that time when they are going to leave, just like that baby bird being kicked out of the nest and has to fly at some point in time, right? Our role as parents is that we do need to get them to the place where they have all the tools they can to be a normal functioning person in society, and can do that and do it well and represent well. But also knowing that your home is always home for them, right? They are always welcome. They are always loved. That while they may leave and go out on their own, this will always be a home for them, always a place they can come back to anytime they want.
Absolutely. And I've definitely appreciated that as an adult, knowing that my mom didn't quit teaching me when I went to college, or, my parents didn't quit teaching me. They're constantly teaching me still how to be a parent, how to get through things. So I know that your role as a parent doesn't change, but sometimes you feel like you have such a little amount of time to get through everything and teach them, and then all of a sudden it's done, So just reassuring yourselves and your child that you'll.
And they aren't always going to like you in that process.
No, right? They're not.
Trust me, there are moments when they not only do not like you, they may hate you, and they may say those words, right? Yeah. In the spur of anger or in a moment, and that's, don't take it personal. That's middle school, that's teenagers, and that happens. But they come around. They come around. They really do. And like you said, the important thing is to be present in those, especially in those areas we talked about, those 4 areas. And just that's all we can do is to follow through in those areas, and then let go and let God. Someone said.
Yeah. And I like that. Don't take it personal. That's middle school. That's how we can go out. Don't take it personal. That's middle school. I just wanted to kind of end today on a prayer for all of us as parents who are kind of in this phase or entering this phase or going through this phase now. So if you guys want, we can just end this in a prayer together. All right. Dear God, we are so thankful for your guidance, and we are thankful for our children. We're thankful for the development, all the amazing ways that you show up through those different phases in life, God. Please help us to follow your example and just always be there to guide and love and accept and encourage and affirm and just show up in our kids' lives. Help us to remember that this is a phase in their life and a stage, and that is important, but we can get through it, and provide us the eyes to see the opportunities to have these important conversations and feel the moment that we need to show up and feel those connections that we have in our relationships, God, and help us to just always be able to turn back to you, and help us to help our children to have strong faith through this phase so that they can carry through to their lives. In this, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you all for joining us. And if you ever have questions or anything, definitely reach out to us.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.